You're listening to the Exhibitionist podcast, brought to you by InspiringExhibitors.com and Pro Extra, a wholly owned division of 12 Man Solutions Limited.
Hi, and welcome to the 5th episode of the Exhibitionist, the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in again, and we are delighted to have you with us. Very shortly, we'll be hearing from Jonny Ross of Fleek Marketing, and Jonny is a digital marketing and social media expert who will be giving us some fantastic tips and advice on how to make sure that your stand gets on the must-see list for visitors before they even hit the trade show floor. So we've had a really interesting week this week where we have been at Excel in London for most of the week, which is a fantastic venue for exhibitions, and we got to see a wide variety of very different sector shows that were happening down there. We initially had gone on an accompanied visit with one of our clients, something that we do quite often, where a client will ask us to go to a show either within their industry or in a different sector with them and just have a wander around and have a look at what's standing out to us, what they can learn for their own exhibition stands, and anything that's interesting on the show floor. So we started off at Food Matters Live, which is largely a content-driven event. The feature areas and live theatres had some fantastic seminars on a whole range of different topics within the food and drink industry. But actually what caught our eye most was something that we saw on the Food and Drink Wales stand. And this really brought it home to us because we'd just been reading an article by Jez Paxman in this month's edition of Exhibition News around how brands need to adapt to millennials through using experiential at events. But actually it probably reaches a little bit further than millennials, and everybody's looking for an experiential stand now at an exhibition. We're so used to seeing 3x3 shelves that actually anybody who can disrupt and do something a little bit different will always catch the attention. Food and Drink Wales had a brilliant installation from a company called Orchard, who were based in Cardiff, and they had created a little dome, a little black dome, which inflatable straight away grabbed people's attention as something different. They were projecting some fantastic video imagery of beautiful scenes of Wales, of the people of Wales, and some of the food and drink production onto the ceiling of the dome. And they were inviting their VIP customers to come and experience and sample food and drink, have a meal within the dome itself. And it was a brilliant piece of disruptive marketing, a way to really get people asking, how do I get an invite into there? That looks brilliant. That's where I want to be. And also helps bring to life the sampling and the quality of the produce from some of their exhibitors on their stands. So great work, Food and Drink Wales and Orchard. We think in what was quite a lot of very similar stands, you guys really, really stood out and nailed the experiential element for us. The second thing that really stood out to us was actually at an exhibition over the hallway. That was their energy management exhibition, which is quite a difficult topic to kind of create some disruption for. There were a lot of providers there who were quite functional, and that's always a really hard exhibition to work on, to try and keep your message concise, but also keep it interesting. Now, one of the things we will often say when we're working with clients is you've got to work really, really hard if you book that first stand on a show floor. And a lot of sales managers will sell that as a premium piece of space. And it is a great piece of space. You're getting visitors in before they're tired, before they've become overwhelmed with messaging. But equally, you've got them at that second as they walk through the door when they might be totally overwhelmed by everything that's going on, totally in awe of the bright lights and the stands. And you've got to work really hard to make that first stand on a show floor work for you, to make sure that people don't just bypass you and think they'll come back to you later on. Now, the company ESB had taken the first stand on the exhibition show floor, and they had blown all our theory out of the water. They had a fantastic stand. They'd obviously spent some money on it, but ESB are a major player in the Irish energy management market and are trying to break into the UK market. They knew exactly who they wanted to speak to, and they knew exactly how they'd got their stand working to get those people's attention as soon as they walked through the door. They had interactivity in terms of a competition. They had very clear messaging, so immediately as you looked at their graphics, you know what they did and what benefit they could bring to you as a visitor. They had a really nice relaxed area for networking if they did meet somebody who they wanted to sit down and have a coffee with. Their staff were really engaged and were asking about your problems and your solutions and how we might help you with that. So there was no aggressive selling. It was just very relaxed, informal conversations. So I think all credit to ESB for proving us wrong that you can actually make that front stand work really, really well, as long as you put the time, the money and the effort into thinking about what you want to deliver. So those are the couple of things that we've picked up on this week in what has been a very busy week out in the field. So we will quickly move over to our conversation with Jonny Ross now, who's going to give us, as I say, some hints and tips about pre-show marketing and how you make sure you get on a visitor's must-see list before they hit the trade show floor. In this edition of The Exhibitionist, the podcast, we're talking to Jonny Ross from Fleek Marketing of how you can amplify your presence at a trade show using digital and social media. So Jonny, I'm going to describe you as a digital, social and search consultant, trainer and speaker, but I'm sure you can articulate that better than me. So would you like to introduce yourself?
I think you've done very well, to be perfectly honest. I don't know what else I'd add to that.
Brilliant. That's a good start to begin with, and welcome to the show. Jonny, you're involved in all things digital. So in this digital era, why do you think that trade shows and exhibitions are still relevant for businesses?
Really good question. I think a lot of people make this mistake that they think, there's digital, there's Facebook, there's Twitter, we can do some free social media and that will solve all our business problems. And the reality is that's not, that it's just another channel, and the fundamentals still need to be done. So you still need that face-to-face and that networking. The beauty of digital is that you can make it more powerful. So I think face-to-face conferences, networking, exhibitions aren't about to disappear. I think if anything, they're more valuable than any other time because there's in some ways there's less of them, and so it's easier to stand out, and using the power of digital to make them even better is the opportunity.
It's exactly that point, Jonny. It's about how you can make your trade shows more powerful. So how do you think exhibitors can use digital and social media to attract the right type of visitors to their stand at an exhibition?
Yeah, so that's the thing. It's about having a plan first. It's about what are we trying to achieve out of this? Who are we trying to talk to? It's all the basic stuff before you even think digital. And a lot of exhibitors don't even get the basics right about what are we trying to achieve? What are the objectives? What's going to look good afterwards? And once you've got that plan, it's about how you can fit digital in. And just like any marketing plan, you would then look at, right, well, we're trying to tap into this particular type of person or this particular industry or this particular sector. Okay, what might be the best digital way of doing that, whether that be little things on the bottom of email signatures to some kind of LinkedIn advertising campaign to even some kind of Instagram campaign. So it very much depends on who you're trying to attract, and having that plan and then thinking what channels could we use.
It's a really valid point that we often talk about in the book and on blogs about having objectives in the first place to fit a marketing campaign around rather than just doing an event for an event's sake.
Absolutely.
So where have you seen an exhibitor use digital and social media particularly effectively?
Well, unfortunately, there's more examples of where they haven't. There's not many that get it right. The ones that get it right engage on digital prior, during, and after an event. And the ones that get it right think about how to connect that online and offline world. So whether that be on the exhibition stand, little prompts to make people think of digital. It's tapping into what people enjoy doing on digital. So for example, having some kind of local a celebrity is not quite the right word. I'm not talking about big expense, but local well-known person on a stand. People love doing selfies, and that type of thing can just instantly power something digital. Or it could be some kind of giveaway, but then making something of the handing over of the prize and grabbing that picture. It's about, as I said, marrying that online and offline and making it easy for people to naturally just use digital. And in fact, if anything, using your visitors, using your customers to actually do the marketing for you. That's the best way of doing it. Instead of you just going out there and saying, come and see us, we're on stand, whatever. Actually, if you've got people going out there saying, look what I've just won from this stand, or look what I've just done, or, and that type of thing, and getting people to ultimately be your voice. And as I said, it's about having the digital going on prior and afterwards and making the most of it.
So, Jonny, what I think you're saying is that there has to be a reason for your social and digital activity. Quite often we'll see exhibitors just tweeting, come and see us at our stand, but they don't give any real reason for why a visitor will get value from that or how they're going to engage with them.
Yeah, it's about, social and digital. A lot of people forget that it's still conversation, and they're just sort of using it in a broadcasting way and not actually having a conversation. So if anything, it's about joining a conversation. It's about seeing, the best way of doing it. If you imagine walking into a room and imagine Twitter or Instagram or Facebook being a room, you're not going to just walk in and scream at the top of your voice, hey, we're at stand whatever, come and see us. People are just going to run away. So it's about understanding what conversations are being had in that room or that channel online, and getting involved in that conversation. So it's, so if anything, it might be bigging up other exhibitors, and talking about what other people are currently talking about. And the speakers, etc. But finding out what conversations being had online is the place to start.
Such a good point. And you mentioned there that there are probably more examples of things that exhibitors have done badly relating to social and digital. What are some of the pitfalls that exhibitors might fall into around social and digital at exhibition?
Yeah, I guess the first thing is not having a plan, so not thinking it through and doing it at the last minute. Some people just don't do it at all, which is, such a shame because there's such a massive opportunity. Not thinking about hashtags and not thinking about joining in, as I said, other conversation. So that would be something else. And not utilizing the latest in digital. So the latest in digital would be video. And if you were to I'm about to talk about Instagram. The key thing there, though, is your target audience on Instagram? So just because I'm talking about Instagram doesn't mean you should be on Instagram. It's about the plan. Who's the target audience? Who you're trying to attract? If they are in that demographic and they're on Instagram, great. But then how would you use Instagram? Well, actually, nowadays, you wouldn't just be posting pictures. It's all about video. Likewise, on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, there's lots of areas you can use video. There's lots of areas you can use live video. And so, the pitfalls are not really thinking about it, not having, in fact, a great example would be not having some pre-made images and social adverts. So the example would be, about to put a tweet out or a status out, but actually you haven't got that image to back it up with some pre-content written on top of the image.
It's such a shame as exhibitors can underestimate the value of the content that they could share from their stand. When there's noise and competitions and conversations, sampling, giveaways, it's really valuable content that other visitors might want to see, and it could influence them to come over and see you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just like, a restaurant puts their customers in their window. An exhibitor needs to make sure that they've got people booked on that stand to come and see them well before the day, because people come to busy things. If you've got a dead stand with nothing going on, then it's not as attractive as lots of noise. Good noise, of course. And it's about using digital to get that across. So it's about, what's the strategy? Who's going to be taking the pictures? Who's going to be taking the images? In fact, actually, the best strategy is getting the visitors to use their own devices to take pictures and videos, because it's then a lot easier for them to post it online than you having it stored on your devices and then posting it as yourself. It's not quite as strong. So it's about trying to think of what can we create, what scenario can we create where a visitor wants to use their device to take a picture or image and then naturally wants to upload it.
It's the fear of missing out. If there's a really busy stand, as people we're naturally curious and nosy, we want to know what's happening over there that I'm not getting and that I'm missing out on.
Absolutely.
So how can exhibitors use digital and social to follow up more effectively with visitors that they've met at a trade show or an exhibition?
Yeah, I guess that's stepping into the traditional side of how you would keep in contact with someone. So, in a traditional way, you'd pick up the phone, you'd go out for coffee, you'd go for lunch. I'm not saying you wouldn't do any of that. But what you can do is you can use digital to fill the gaps in between. So it's a great way to keep that conversation going. People typically buy after they've sort of had 7 points of contact, and so it's about not stalking the person, but do you know what? Why not? So in a nice way. So it's about finding them on Twitter, finding them on LinkedIn, finding them on whatever platform that might be relevant. Getting their email address, getting permission with the whole GDPR. Let's not talk about that. But having permission and emailing them, and so having some kind of strategy of what the plan, what are you going to be doing after the show? How are you going to be engaging with them? What different ways can you engage with them? How can you keep that conversation up? And in fact, if anything, how can you keep them seeing that you are the expert in your field? So what content plan have you got afterwards, and what's your strategy on them seeing that content?
It's a lot of the things that we have talked about with you before, Jonny. Although we've worked in events for quite a few years, I remember one of the pieces of advice that came courtesy of yourself just a few months ago, and that was to take a photograph of your stand when it's busy and include it in your follow-up emails. Visitors are unlikely to remember you. They'll have seen lots of exhibitors and had lots of conversations. So if you can send them a picture of your busy stand in your digital follow-up, whether that's an email or a tweet, it just helps jog their memory. So thanks for sharing that bit of advice, and definitely one we pass on to our clients.
You've reminded me of that comment, and it is add the picture in an email campaign afterwards. Remind them of what they saw. Definitely, really good.
We work with quite a lot of SMEs and startup companies who are possibly thinking about their first event, and they would really like to use digital and social, but they quite often feel anxious about, are they going to break it? Are they going to do it wrong? Are they going to offend somebody? So can people really break social media, and are there any rules that they should be aware of?
They say no good. No, what do they say? No good. My words have completely gone. No good PR. That's the one. Thank you. No, yeah. Bad publicity is good PR. No, I can't remember the saying, but you've got it. Thank you. So can they break it? I don't think they can break it. Okay, so there are pitfalls. You can say the wrong thing. You can get yourself into deep water. It's about, acting as you would offline as well. So it's no different. You're online. That's the only difference. It's about, would you say that, the best thing is, would you say that to your grandma? That's the best piece of advice I would say. Would you say that to your grandma? And therefore, if you wouldn't, then it's probably not best to post that. And if you're unsure, check with a colleague. But on the flip side, some of the best digital marketing, some of the best online content can be controversial. Likewise, in the offline world, something controversial can make some big differences. There's lots of political examples of that. So I think it's about just being aware, just thinking twice. But there's nothing wrong with being a bit controversial.
And I think it's a case of just having a go and seeing what works for you. Try a few different things, and if it's not working, try something else.
Yeah, from a really basic level, it's about listening for a couple of weeks first. So it's about having, not waiting till the day and thinking, God, what are we going to do? But actually having that plan and thinking about it months before. And actually the best piece of advice from a really basic level, go and listen on a platform for a couple of weeks. See how people do talk online and how people engage. And from that, think of ideas of how you're going to get in that conversation.
So, Jonny, thinking about the future, how do you see trade shows evolving over the next 3 to 5 years? And what role do you see digital and social playing in them?
I think that people like change. So I think that for exhibitions to keep surviving well, they have to be continually changing, continually adapting, and if anything, marrying that online and offline world together to show exhibitors and, more importantly, visitors the value. I think how digital will play a part is tapping into things like live video and tapping into making, it's that sort of scarcity type of marketing and campaign where you can see other people and doing something and you want to be there as well. So if anything, it's about the shows themselves using digital correctly prior as well, not just the exhibitors. I guess where do I see things going? Much more live video, much more video, much more. I think a lot of the secrets of success is about having great content at the show, and the better that content, the more people that want to come, and making sure that exhibitors, stamping out the type of exhibitors that just sit there on their laptop and don't look up. Because that just doesn't help anyone, and so it could be a case that actually what shows need to do is actually say we haven't got room for you this year, and I guess that could be where things go.
Wow, that's a really interesting thought for event organisers to challenge exhibitors who don't add value and don't really participate in their shows. I would love to hear from any event organiser out there who thinks that they'd be interested in pursuing that as part of their strategy. It would certainly be a really brave move, but one which changes the visitor experience. We're also starting to hear more now about virtual and online trade shows. So taking the footprint of a show and putting it online, so that anyone who can't make it to the show can go online and have a look at the content from exhibitors. Where do you stand? Are virtual trade shows the future, or are they incompatible with what is essentially a face-to-face tactic?
I've seen some examples of this, and I think there is some value, especially from a global point of view. Some, being able to massively changing the accessibility. So I think there is a space, and I think depending on what the content is, there is something to consider, and there's still a whole advertising angle in all of that. However, I don't think you'll ever reach the power of local, and local is so powerful, and I think simply because of that, I think if anything, you may see local and online, but if anything, I think what would be best is how to merge the two together and how to make them both work at the same time, and to use that local event to power the global online event. I'm not convinced that purely going virtual. I think that would be a massive shame, and lose a huge amount of opportunity.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, Jonny. If we think back right to the start of our conversation, and we were talking about the power of exhibitions being in that they are face-to-face, and that's what people are looking for when they go to trade shows and exhibitions, is that face-to-face connection, and people still buy from people. So if you move everything online, you really take away the whole context and the value of what people are really looking for from a trade show.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's been great speaking with you today, Jonny. Really interesting and useful advice. But who else do you think has some interesting stuff to talk about in the industry that we could speak to for a future podcast?
I'd suggest you speak to Emma Cartmel from CHS Group. They are a conference. They have a conference and hospitality show, events for event organisers. So I'd definitely speak to her. Colin Tweedy, all about how to network and get the most out of events. And Jeff Shepherd from the Yorkshire Mafia puts on a number of events, very successful. One of the biggest B2B exhibitions in the north. So there's three for you.
Brilliant, thank you. It's been great to speak to you today. As I say, really useful info and advice that will hopefully inspire our listeners to go and think differently about how they use social media campaigns. So if anyone wants to get in touch with you and ask for some more advice and support, how do they find you, Jonny?
Yeah, sure. So I'm on LinkedIn, just /Jonny Ross. You can find me on Twitter at Jonny Ross, no HJONNYROSS, or at Fleek_marketing on Twitter as well.
So once again, Jonny, thanks for all your advice and support today. And We've worked with Jonny in the past and he is brilliant at what he does. So if you need some help and advice, please do get in touch with him. Once again, Jonny, thank you for coming on the show. Been great speaking with you.
Thanks for having me. Really enjoyed it, and good luck with the show.
So some fantastic advice there from Jonny Ross, and something I hope you'll all go away and be able to apply to whatever fantastic exhibition you're planning for next year. So that's all on today's episode. Hope you've enjoyed it. As always, if you have a trade show trouble, please do get in touch with us via the website at www.inspiringexhibitors.com or via Twitter at ProExtraCo, and we will try and get your trade show trouble solved for you. Coming up on the next episode, we've got a really great interview with the Department for International Trade. For anybody who's done some exhibiting in the UK or in their domestic market and is starting to think about moving abroad and exhibiting at an international trade show. Lots of the principles and theories are the same, but a lot of the logistics and the language can be much more difficult. So we have John Jenkinson from the Northeast region of the DIT, the Department for International Trade, who will be talking to us about all the things that you need to consider if you're thinking of going global with your exhibitions. So have a fantastic week. Let us know which exhibitions you've been at and what you've seen that has really excited or underwhelmed you. We tend to talk a lot about what's good, but if there's something that you've seen that you think wasn't as great as it could have been, then do let us know. And we look forward to hearing from you all shortly. Thanks for listening.
If you'd like more information about our book, The Exhibitionist, future podcasts and newsletters, please remember to hop over to inspiringexhibitors.com where you'll be able to find all the relevant information. Once again, thank you for listening.